The rain was not cleansing. In Northbridge, it was a solvent, dissolving the edges of the city into a smear of neon and fog. Above the streaming streets, the sign for the Rasa Consortium was a vertical slash of crimson light, a lipstick smear of blood against the bruised twilight. The building itself did not scrape the sky. It pierced it. Maya Hartley, 29 years old, pushed through the heavy glass doors of the lobby. The marble floor was vast enough to hold a cathedral, and silent enough to be a tomb. Her raincoat, bought for $12 from a discount bin, dripped onto the pristine surface, leaving small, apologetic puddles. She clutched a damp manila file bag to her chest. Inside it, her life, and the life of her son, were reduced to a plastic rectangle. She was a night nurse. She knew the smells of antiseptic and quiet fear. She was also, more recently, a part-time data broker, a seller of secrets whispered in the digital dark. She did this to pay for the machines that kept her 8-year-old son, Atlas, breathing steadily, to pay for the specialists who looked at charts and spoke of catastrophic heart failure. Desperation was its own currency, and Maya was nearly bankrupt. It was this desperation that propelled her into the private elevator, this desperation that made her press the button for the 77th floor. The ascent was silent, smooth, and sickening. She was rising above the city, above the law, to meet a man who was a myth. Lucien Rasa, a billionaire recluse on the society pages, a shadow dawn in the whispers of the underworld. He was the silent owner of the Viridian Circle, a network that held Northbridge in its invisible hand. The elevator doors opened not into a reception area, but onto a wall of frosted glass that seemed to bleed fog. A single, matte black door was set into it. She did not have to knock. The door hissed open. He was a silhouette against a window that framed the storm. The office was vast, dark, and cold. And then the door behind her shut with a heavy, final click. The sound was an ending. Lucien Rasa did not move. He watched her through the dimness. His eyes, even from across the room, were not just observant. They were an assessment, a warning, and a promise of a danger far more sophisticated than the simple brutality she knew from the streets. "You have 10 seconds. His voice was not loud, but it filled the cavernous room, a low resonance that vibrated in her bones. Maya walked forward, her cheap shoes silent on the plush carpet. She did not apologize for the rain, for her presence. She placed the hard drive on the acres of polished mahogany that served as his desk. "This is the entire money laundering ledger for the Black Sable crew," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Their routes, their accounts, their contacts." She pushed the drive forward. "I need money. For my son. For an immediate heart transplant, the one the insurance company denied." He did not look at the drive. His gaze remained locked on her. He came around the desk, not with a predator's stalk, but with the fluid, unnerving grace of a man who owned the very ground he walked on. He stopped. Too close. "3 questions, Siu," he said, the scent of expensive whiskey and cold ozone coming off him. 1. How does a night nurse get this? "I sell data. I found a vulnerability in a hospital's payment portal. It led to an offshore account. I followed the trail." 2. Who else knows you are here? "No one. The desperate do not share their last resort." He was silent. His stillness was a physical weight. 3. What is their core weakness? Maya did not flinch. "They are sloppy. They move their profit through a virtual casino, the Obsidian Arcade. They use high-volume, low-value transactions, thinking it hides them. It does not. It just creates noise, but the algorithm they use to disguise the flow, it has a signature. It repeats every 4 hours. A flicker in his eyes, respect, or just the recognition of a useful tool. The answer never came. The world dissolved in a crash of exploding glass, a sound like a thunderclap and a hornet's nest breaking at once. The massive window behind Lucien's desk vanished. Maya screamed as a sliver of glass sliced her cheek. Before the glass had even finished falling, Lucien had moved. He did not dive. He pivoted, grabbing her by the waist and pulling her down behind the solid wall of his desk. His body covered hers, a shield of tailored wool and solid muscle. The air cracked again, the sharp, dry snap of a high-velocity bullet embedding itself in the wall where they had stood. Lockdown. Lucien's voice was a snarl, directed at the room itself. Security protocol scarlet. The room plunged into near darkness as metal shutters slammed down over the broken window, sealing them in. Red emergency lights bathed the office in a hellish glow. Scarlet, she thought, her mind racing. A protocol for betrayal. The shot came from outside, but the order was for inside. Lucien pushed himself off her, but his hand found her wrist in the darkness. His grip was firm. His thumb brushed lightly. Once. Over her pulse point, he was checking for tremors, assessing her panic. She was terrified, but her pulse, while fast, was even. The unexpected brief warmth of his skin against hers was a shock. A small point of human contact in the chaos. It confused her more than the gunshot. She pulled her wrist free, not out of fear, but to prove she was not shaking. She met his gaze in the red gloom. Her own was steady. He nodded, a sharp, decisive movement. The test was over. The negotiation was done. The money for your son's surgery will be transferred before you leave this building, Lucien Rasa stated. It was not a promise. It was a fact. He will have the best security my organization can provide. He will be untouched. Maya let out the breath she had been holding. And in return, Lucien rose to his full height, a figure of absolute authority in the crimson light. In return, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet level, you belong to me. You will be my eyes in the shadow. You will use that talent of yours to help me find the mole in the Viridian Circle who just tried to kill me, and you will help me burn the Black Sable crew to the ground. The rain in Northbridge had a memory, and it always smelled of rust. Maya Hartley returned to her dockside apartment, the phantom chill of the 77th floor still clinging to her skin. The marble vastness of the Rasa Consortium was a galaxy away from the rattling pipes and the scent of fried onions in her hallway. She pushed open the door, her cheap raincoat dripping onto the worn linoleum. "Mom?" His voice was her gravity. Atlas was curled on the sofa, a thin blanket over his legs, a library book about nebulas open on his chest. He was 8 years old, with a mind full of supernovas and a heart that was failing his body. She crossed the room in 3 strides and gathered him up, burying her face in his hair, breathing in the smell of soap and sleep. He was the only clean thing in her world. "Hey, Starlight," she whispered, her voice thick. He hugged her tightly, his small arms surprisingly strong. "You missed dinner, Mom, but I saved you a cookie. And don't forget, the simulated stargazing at school is tomorrow. You promised you'd chaperone. We're going to see the Orion simulation." Her heart seized. The promise, made in a different lifetime, now felt like a cruel joke, but she looked into his wide, trusting eyes. "I remember, baby. I will be there. I promise." 2 hours later, Lucien Rasa's world arrived. They did not knock. They were simply there. A man named Jax Calder, built like a trauma ward's crash cart, solid and silent, entered first. He moved with an unsettling economy, his eyes cataloging every window, every door, every weak point. Behind him came Ariella Quinn. She was a razor blade in a silk suit, her gaze cold and appraising. She scanned the tiny apartment, the second-hand furniture, the crayon drawings taped to the wall with an expression that bordered on disgust. "This is substandard," Ariella announced, her voice like clipped ice. She was supervising 2 technicians who were installing a small, discreet panel by the door. "The system is codenamed Vega. It connects directly to our network. You will be given a panic code. Do not use it unless you are actively dying. Jax will be stationed in the vehicle downstairs." Jax ignored her, his attention on the rattling window frame. He looked at Maya once and gave a short, sharp nod. It was Strangely, the most reassuring thing that had happened all day. Far uptown, in his sterile fortress, Lucian Rossa analyzed the data Maya had brought. The hard drive was a Pandora's box. The Black Sable crew's sloppiness was evident, but beneath their crude digital fingerprints was a more sophisticated signature. He traced the metadata, following the ghost in the machine. It led him not to a rival gangster, but to a server address registered to the Bureau of Corporate Vigilance, the BCV, the city's supposed financial watchdog. Someone inside the agency was selling confidential investigation files, using the Black Sable network as a laundry service for the information. The sniper who shattered his window was not just trying to kill a Don. They were trying to silence a witness and retrieve a ledger. Maya Hartley had not just brought him an enemy, she had brought him a war. The next morning, the call Maya had been dreading came. Nadia Brooks, her best friend, an investigative podcaster whose voice was a rising force in Northbridge, precisely because she hated secrets. "Maya, talk to me." Nadia's voice was sharp. No pleasantries. "I'm looking at a hospital donor log, a 7-figure anonymous deposit into the cardiac fund, allocated specifically to Atlas Hartley. 7 figures, Maya. Who did you call? What did you do?" Maya leaned her head against the peeling kitchen wallpaper, the lie heavy on her tongue. "Nad, it was a miracle, a new charity, a lottery. I was selected." The silence on the other end of the line was loud. "A lottery," Nadia repeated, her voice devoid of belief. "Right, because those just fall out of the sky for dockside nurses. Maya, I know you. I know your desperation. Miracles in this city have names, and they always collect. Be careful." The line clicked. Maya closed her eyes. The first crack in her oldest friendship already forming. That afternoon, the miracle showed its other face. Jax insisted on driving her and Atlas to a preoperative appointment. His presence was a silent, looming shadow, but his driving was smooth. Maya was watching Atlas in the back seat, who was explaining why Pluto should still be a planet. She saw it first in the side mirror, a black SUV, no plates, its windows tinted to an illegal degree. It had been behind them for 4 blocks. "Jax," she said, her voice tight with a new, cold fear. "I see it, nut," he replied, his eyes on the mirror. "Check Atlas's seatbelt." He did not speed up. He calmly took the next left, then an immediate sharp right into a narrower street. The SUV mirrored them, its engine roaring, suddenly accelerating. It was no longer following, it was hunting. Jax yanked the wheel, jumping the curb, and slammed the sedan through a rattling chain-link fence, plunging them into a graffiti-soaked service alley. Maya screamed, throwing herself over the back seat to cover Atlas. "Get down, baby! Close your eyes!" The SUV screeched to a halt too wide to enter the alley. A man leaned out the passenger window, his arm extended. The sound was a deafening crack, crack, crack. Bullets sparked off the brick wall just inches from them, shattering the neon sign of the Lucky Lobster restaurant. Red and blue glass rained down as Jax floored the sedan, bursting out the other end of the alley and disappearing into the lunchtime traffic. Atlas was safe. The surgery was scheduled. Maya was sitting in the sterile waiting room, her body still shaking. When Lucian Rossa appeared, he did not look like a Don. He wore dark jeans and a simple, dark sweater that somehow made him look more dangerous than the suit. He walked past her, straight to Atlas's recovery room. When Maya followed, she stopped in the doorway. Atlas was awake, small and pale in the oversized bed. Lucian was at his bedside. "You must be Atlas," Lucian said, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I am Lucian. I hear you are a fan of the stars." Atlas nodded, his eyes wide. Lucian smiled, a small, shocking expression. He reached into his pocket. "Watch closely." He produced a single, heavy silver coin. He rolled it across his knuckles, a fluid, mesmerizing motion, then closed his fist. When he opened it, the coin was gone. "Where did it go?" Atlas whispered, mesmerized. Lucian leaned in, lowering himself so he was eye level with the child. "Magic," he said, and reached behind Atlas's ear, producing the coin. Maya watched, her throat tight. She was watching a man who commanded killers, a man who had bought her life, bend down to a child's level and offer him a moment of wonder. Later, in the hallway, her phone vibrated, a text from an unknown number. "Gideon sees you." The name hit her like a physical blow. Gideon Vale. Her first love, Atlas's father, the man who had walked out for a pack of cigarettes 9 years ago and never came back. She was still staring at the screen, the blood draining from her face. When Ariella Quinn appeared, "The boss requires your presence." In a private conference room, Lucian stood by the window. Ariella did not wait. "She is compromised," she snapped, her voice a venomous hiss. "The attack today. The text message you just received. Gideon Vale. Did you think we would not run your name?" Lucian turned, his face an unreadable mask. "Ariella." A simple warning. "She is a liability," Ariella pressed. "She is tied to the enemy. He knew her, which means they knew about her. She brought this down on us." Lucian's gaze shifted to Maya. He was searching for something, a confirmation or a denial. "Is she right?" "I have not seen him in 9 years, Maya said, her voice shaking. Lucian held her gaze for a long, heavy moment. He turned to his strategist. "That is enough. She is mine. She answers to me." But as he turned, Maya saw it, a brief, almost imperceptible flicker in his eyes. It was the one thing she never expected to see from Lucian Rossa. Hesitation. "The auction is in 2 nights, he said, his voice now flat, all business. "A collection of North Harbor financiers. The Black Sable will be selling something. I need to know what, and I need to know who is buying." He looked directly at Maya. "They will be expecting my men. They will not be expecting a nurse. You will go. You will plant a microphone. You will be my ears." It was not a request. It was the next installment payment. "I'll do it," Maya said. Glass Harbor was not a harbor. It was a lie, buried beneath the foundations of a forgotten municipal building. The auction space was a cavern of raw concrete and exposed steel beams, draped in heavy velvet and lit by antique chandeliers. It smelled of damp stone, expensive perfume, and old money. Maya felt like a counterfeit painting. The dress Ariella had provided was black silk, simple and worth more than her car. It clung to her body, a second skin that felt alien and too revealing. The microphone was a small, cold disc taped between her shoulder blades. Lucian, at her side, was transformed. He was no longer the Don of the shadowy office. He was a bored art collector. His tuxedo perfect, his gaze dismissive as he scanned the lots. He played the part so well it chilled her. They stopped in front of a massive, chaotic oil painting. "The brushwork is aggressive," Lucian commented, his voice pitched for the room, but his eyes on her. "It suggests the artist was desperate, perhaps even reckless. Do you find it convincing?" Maya understood. He was asking about her. "I find it honest," she replied, her voice smooth, her translator's poise kicking in. "Desperation can be a very precise tool. It is the provenance I question. It feels like it is hiding its true origin." His lips twitched. A valid critique. A man across the room, wearing a standard-issue federal suit under a badly fitting blazer, froze. His eyes, cold and assessing, locked onto Maya. He was not one of the wealthy patrons. He was a watcher. He recognized her. Maya had seen his face in a data file from the State Financial Integrity Office, a low-level analyst named Kepler. He had been a potential buyer for her data once, before she had anything as valuable as the Rossa ledger. Kepler's hand moved slowly to the earpiece he thought was discreet. Lucian saw the exchange. He did not look at Kepler. He did not stiffen. He simply placed a hand on the small of her back. His touch was a shock, a brand of heat that went straight through the silk. "Do you dance?" he murmured. "What here?" The string quartet in the corner, which had been playing something classical and dull, suddenly shifted. A new, sharp, syncopated rhythm began, a tango. Lucian's hand tightened. pulling her flush against him. "This is not a request," he said. He propelled her onto the small, cleared space between tables, her feet tangled. She was a nurse, not a dancer. "I cannot do this," she hissed, mortified, knowing Kepler was watching. "You can," Lucian's voice was in her ear, a low command that vibrated against her skin. His other hand found hers, lacing their fingers, his grip like a steel trap. "Follow my count, only my count. 1, 2, 3. He forced her body to move. He was not a gentle partner. He was a dominant one, leading her with a ruthless certainty. He spun her, a sharp, dramatic turn that positioned his back to Kepler and the room's security cameras, shielding her face entirely. His thigh was a wall of muscle against hers, his control absolute. The back of his hand rested on her bare back, just above the silk's low cut. His fingers were warm, tracing small, invisible patterns that were not part of any dance. Her heart, her treacherous, failing heart, skipped a beat. It hammered against her ribs, not just with fear, but with a terrifying, electric response. He was so close. The scent of him, that same cold ozone and expensive whiskey, filled her lungs. "Count with me," he whispered, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. It was both a strategy and an intimacy that felt more profound than a kiss. He guided her in a series of sharp, flawless pivots, moving them not toward the center of the floor, but toward the shadows by the stage. "Now," he breathed. With one more spin, he pulled her out of the light and through a curtained doorway marked "Technical Access." The room was a closet, a tangle of wires and humming servers, smelling of dust and hot plastic. The door swung shut, plunging them into a darkness broken only by the pinprick green lights of the equipment. They were pressed together, chest to chest. Maya could feel the solid, steady beat of his heart against her own frantic rhythm. "The drive," he said, his voice a low rasp. He did not move away. Her hands were shaking. "It is in my clutch." He reached past her, his arm brushing her side, his body pinning her against the wall. She heard the click of her bag opening. He was swapping the dummy USB drive, the one meant to be found, with the one containing the real microphone data. His face was inches from hers. She could feel his breath, warm and even, ghosting across her cheek. It was a small, dark, enclosed space, and it held the tension of a confession she did not know how to make. Shouts erupted from the main room. "BCV police! Everyone stay where you are!" The sound of heavy boots, a woman's scream. The party was over. Lucian grabbed her hand. He did not try the door. He kicked a metal ventilation grate near the floor. It clattered open. "In," he commanded. "It is dark. I cannot—" He gripped her chin, his fingers hard, forcing her to meet his gaze in the gloom. "If you are scared, look only at me." He shoved her forward into the cold, musty tunnel. He followed, his body a solid presence behind her, guiding her, pushing her to move faster. They crawled on hands and knees for what felt like an eternity, the sound of the raid fading behind them. They tumbled out of a different grate into a wind-swept alley smelling of salt and decay. The cold night air hit Maya like a slap. Her hair was torn from its pins. Her silk dress was snagged and dirty. She was shivering, not from the cold, but from the adrenaline, from the proximity, from the crash. Lucian stood, brushing dust from his impeccable tuxedo. He looked at her, a long, unreadable assessment. Then he stripped off his jacket and, without a word, draped it over her shoulders. It was heavy and impossibly warm, cocooning her in his scent. His fingers brushed the side of her neck as he settled the fabric. A brief, accidental stroke of skin on skin. It was not a caress, but it stopped her shaking. It grounded her, pulling her back from the edge of her panic. "We are," she started, but the words died. Lucian was not looking at her. He was looking up, across the water. A column of intense, orange flame licked the sky from the 20th floor of a familiar glass tower, a Rasa Consortium satellite office. The traitor was not just close. The traitor was sending a message, written in fire. As if summoned by the sight. Her phone, safe in the jacket's inner pocket, vibrated. She fumbled for it. A new text. From G. Do not trust him. I still remember the smell of cinnamon in your hair. The first good news arrived in a crayon drawing. Atlas was recovering from the surgery, his small body finally mending. He had spent an entire afternoon with a box of new crayons, meticulously charting a section of the sky. He presented it to Lucian during a brief hospital visit, his expression serious. This is my new constellation, Atlas announced, pointing with a small finger. I named that star there, the brightest one, Rasa 7. Maya watched, her heart aching. Lucian took the drawing. He looked at the waxy, uneven lines for a long moment, his face unreadable. Then, he folded the paper with a strange, precise care and slid it into the inner pocket of his suit, as if it were a high-value security. He did not say thank you, but as he left, he placed a hand on Atlas's head. It was a gesture of possession, of protection. That was more powerful than any words. The war room was a sterile, glass-walled office on a different floor of the consortium. The microphone Maya had planted was useless. The raid had corrupted the data. They were back to the digital trail. He is moving the money, Maya said, her eyes locked on a screen. She was working with Jax, his silent presence a comfort. He is using the Night Vault. It is a chain of cold wallets designed to tumble the crypto. But he is lazy. He's using the same 3-jump sequence for every transfer. Meaning, Lucian's voice came from the head of the table. Meaning I can predict his next move, Maya said, her fingers flying. I can see the pattern. She isolated a string of code. The final transfer's IP address. It is bouncing, but the origin node is local. She ran a trace. It is a derelict building in West Meridian. As if summoned by the information, Ariella Quinn entered. She did not look at Maya. She placed a tablet on the table in front of Lucian. Gideon Vale. The name hung in the air, cold and sharp. On the screen was a personnel file. Gideon, younger, smiling, in a Viridian Circle uniform. He was on your operational team, Ariella said, her voice flat. 5 years ago, a specialist in digital infiltration. He disappeared from our records the same month he vanished from hers. Her gaze flicked to Maya, heavy with accusation. He was not just a random ex-boyfriend. He was one of yours. Lucian's eyes were chips of ice. He looked at Maya. You knew this? No, Maya said, her blood running cold. He told me he worked in tech support for an investment firm. I never knew. She is lying, Ariella hissed. I am not. Maya's voice was quiet, but it cut through Ariella's. I did not know what he was, but I know what he is now. Later, Jax approached her. We recovered this from the West Meridian building. It was a trap. We were expected. He handed her a small, fireproof, portable safe. It has a biometric lock. Figured you might have some luck. She took it to a private room. She knew that lock. She knew the sequence. It was a pressure code he had taught her. Based on the date they first met, her fingers tapped the sequence. It clicked open. Inside, there was only one thing. A photograph. Her 9 years younger, in a hospital bed, laughing, her hair a mess. Her head was resting on the shoulder of a smiling Gideon. It was the day she had told him she was pregnant with Atlas, the day before he disappeared. The past did not just knock. It kicked the door down. Did you love him? Lucian was standing in the doorway. He had not made a sound. Maya looked at the photo, at the ghost of the man she thought she knew, and the girl she no longer was. She closed the safe. She met his gaze, refusing to look away, refusing to be ashamed of a past he could not possibly understand. Yes, she said, her voice clear. I did. But he vanished the moment he knew about Atlas. The admission settled between them, a dangerous, fragile truth. Lucian nodded. Once. The suspicion in his eyes was replaced by something else. A cold, hard certainty. Good. Love that is dead is a weapon you can use. They moved fast. The plan was not to chase him. It was to lure him. He's arrogant, Lucian said, pacing the war room. He's emotional. That text he sent you. Cinnamon, he is trying to unbalance you. We will use it. They constructed a digital trap. Maya, guided by Lucian's team, coded a siren packet. It was a piece of dummy data, encrypted to look like the rest of the Black Sable ledger, and tagged with a digital signature that only Gideon would recognize. They would send it to a dead server, a digital honeypot. When he accessed it, it would activate a trace that not even he could hide from. The night they were to set the trap, Maya's phone buzzed. It was Nadia. Maya, you have to talk to me. Nadia's voice was a frantic whisper. I'm in trouble. I followed the money, the BCV leaks. I found a name, Gideon Vale, and he is connected to the Black Sable crew. I am outside a warehouse on the... The line was suddenly muffled, a man's voice, not Nadia's. Tell your new boyfriend that if he ever wants to see his pet podcaster again, he will meet us, alone. The line went dead. Maya's hands flew to her mouth, a strangled sob catching in her throat. She had done this. Her secrets had put Nadia in their hands. Lucian took the phone from her shaking hand. Jax, get a location on that call. Ariella, prep the tactical team. I'm going, Maya said, her voice a raw nerve. No. Lucian's voice was absolute. You are a civilian. You are the target. You will stay here, with Atlas. He is not here, Maya snapped, her fear turning to a white-hot rage. He is safe, but Nadia is not. They took her because of me. This is my fault. I do not care whose fault it is, Lucian said, grabbing his coat. You are an asset, and I will not risk you. An asset, she repeated, stepping in front of him, blocking his path to the door. Is that what I am? Is that all Atlas is a piece on your board? This is not a game, Maya. Then stop playing it with my life. My son is brave. He's lying in that hospital bed facing a battle you cannot even imagine. And I am his mother. I am brave, too. I am going. He stared at her, his eyes dark, the muscle in his jaw ticking. The silence in the room was so heavy it was hard to breathe. He saw the iron in her spine, the same iron he had recognized on the 77th floor. He saw the woman who had walked into a Dawn's office to save her son. He did not shout, he did not argue. He simply moved, closing the last bit of space between them. He lowered his head and gently, impossibly touched his forehead to hers. It was not a kiss. It was a transfer of strength, a silent, binding contract. Her eyes fluttered shut at the contact, at the warmth of his skin, at the sheer, stunning intimacy of the gesture. Then come with me, he whispered, his voice a rough vibration that she felt through her skull. But stand on my left where my heart can hear you. The Brim River was a scar of black, oily water. On its bank, the abandoned cement silo rose like a monument to decay. Inside, on the 5th floor, Nadia Brooks was zip-tied to a steel chair. She was a beacon of terrified light, illuminated by the small, blinking red LEDs of a dozen drones hovering around her. They were not surveillance. They were bombs. Jax, on the roof, northwest corner, you have 2 snipers. Lucian's voice was a flat, cold instrument in Maya's ear. Ariella, you have the network. Tell me when it is clean. Working. Ariella's voice was tight from the van parked a half-mile away. Maya, your turn. Maya looked up at the freight elevator. It was a cage of rust, suspended on a cable that looked like knotted string. Her hands were shaking. She pressed her palms against the gritty concrete wall, took one deep breath, and stepped onto the platform. She pulled the chain. The elevator began its slow, groaning ascent, a perfect rising target. She stopped at the 5th floor, peering through the bars. The drones hummed, a chorus of mechanical wasps. And then he stepped out of the shadows. Hello, Maya. Gideon Vale. It was the same, and entirely different. The easy charm she remembered was still there, but it was now a sharp, cruel veneer over something rotten. He was thinner, his eyes harder. He smiled, and it did not touch his eyes. "This is a hell of a reunion, sweetheart," Manny said, walking calmly toward Nadia, who was sobbing. "You look good. Expensive." "Let her go, Gideon." Maya's voice was a low tremor, amplified by the earpiece. "Quiet," Lucian commanded. "Do not engage." But Gideon had heard her. He looked up at the elevator cage. "I knew you would come. He sends his new pet." He stroked Nadia's hair and she flinched. "I did all this, he continued, his voice conversational, as if they were sharing coffee. "I sold my soul to the Black Sable, took all that risk to build something, to buy a future. For us, Maya, for you, me, and the boy." The lie was so profound, so audacious, it tasted like gunpowder in the air. "You left us," she whispered. "He is stalling." Lucian's voice was a razor. "Jax, now, North Sniper." A single, muffled pop echoed from outside. One of the drones wobbled and crashed to the ground, exploding in a contained flash. Gideon spun, his charm vanishing. "You brought friends." "Jax, second target." Another pop, another drone exploded. "Ariella, the mines," Lucian barked. "They are linked." Ariella's voice was strained. "The tango. He's using a 4-beat sequence trigger. I am trying to loop the signal. It has the same rhythm as the auction." Maya heard it, the blinking LEDs on the remaining drones. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The same beat Lucian had forced her to follow. Gideon pulled a detonator from his pocket. "One button, Maya, and your friend is gone. And so are you." "Keep him talking," Maya said, her voice dropping, her hands no longer shaking. She was not talking to Lucian. She was talking to herself. She stepped out of the elevator, the drones whirred, their sensors locking onto her. "Brave," Gideon sneered, his finger hovering over the button, or stupid. "You forgot the keys, Gideon," she said, walking slowly toward him. "To untie her, or did you plan to carry her out?" He paused. It was a flaw in his plan. He wanted Nadia alive, as leverage. He smiled, a flash of the old Gideon, always thinking, "My Maya." He tossed a small key at her feet. "Go on, be the hero." Maya bent, her eyes never leaving his. She picked up the key. She walked past him, toward Nadia. She could smell him, the same scent of cheap cologne and something metallic, like old pennies. She fumbled with the zip tie on Nadia's wrist. "Hurry up," he snapped. "My hands are shaking." She lied. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, feigning the fear he expected. "You still remember," she whispered, her voice a fragile, intimate thing. "The smell of cinnamon." It was the hook, his ego, his nostalgia. It was all there. He smirked, the cruelty softening for just a second. "Of course. Baby, I remember everything." He leaned in, drawn by the memory, by the scent he thought he owned. That was when she moved. She did not go for the lock. She dropped the key and slammed her palm up, under his wrist, the one holding the detonator. She grabbed his thumb with her other hand and twisted. A sharp snap of bone echoed in the silo. Gideon screamed, a raw, high-pitched sound. The detonator clattered from his broken hand. The remaining drones, their sequence broken by Ariella, simply dropped to the floor, inert. The moment was shattered by the sound of gunfire from below. Real gunfire. Heavy. "BCV," a voice roared. "They are on the ground floor." Gideon clutched his ruined hand, his face pale with shock and rage. He kicked an oil drum at her and ran, disappearing into the deeper darkness of the silo. The world exploded. A volley of bullets ripped through the space where she stood. Lucian was there. He appeared from the stairwell like a wraith, tackling her, pulling her behind a massive cement pillar. The wall she had been leaning against vaporized into dust and shrapnel. He had come, not from the comms, but from the fight. He was a half-beat too late to stop Gideon, but a half-beat early to save her. He held her, his body a solid shield, the smell of cordite and his own cold scent filling her senses. The noise was deafening. He pressed his lips to her ear, his voice rough, hoarse from the smoke. "You did better than I would have." They got Nadia out, Jax, bleeding from a graze on his shoulder, covered their retreat. They were gone before the BCV team, disoriented and fed by a false tip, even found the 5th floor. Back in the war room, the victory felt like ashes. Nadia was safe, sedated, and in the care of Lucian's private doctor. But Gideon was gone. All he had left behind, jammed into the concrete where he had been standing, was a knife. It was a vicious-looking dagger, the handle carved with the black sable symbol. Etched onto the blade were a set of coordinates. Then came the news. Ariella turned on the wall-mounted screen. Maya's face was plastered on every local news channel. Poor nurse, single mother, kidnapped by recluse billionaire Lucian Rossa. The BCV, humiliated at the silo, had doubled down. Using the Black Sable's media plants, they had issued a warrant for Lucian's arrest for kidnapping. "He's burning you," Ariella said, her face grim. "He used your friend to trap us, and the media to trap you. You are no longer an asset. You are a liability. We have to go. Disappear. I have protocols for this, Lucian. We can be in Argentina in 18 hours. Lucian stared at the screen, at Maya's driver's license photo, at the lie that was now the truth. "No," Maya said. The word was quiet, but it silenced the room. Ariella and Lucian both turned to her. "He used my son. He used my best friend. Now he is using my face. If you run, you prove them right." She looked at Lucian, her eyes burning, not with fear but with a cold fury that matched his own. "If you run, my son will learn what it means when an adult gives up." They did not retreat to the consortium. They retreated to a ghost. The Halcyon was a temporary penthouse, a sterile, high-tech sanctuary Lucian kept for emergencies, furnished with expensive, soulless art and furniture that no one had ever truly used. Outside, the rain was no longer a mist, it was an assault, hammering the floor-to-ceiling windows with a frantic, rhythmic percussion. It was the sound of Northbridge's heart, beating with panic, trying to break in. Lucian stood by the glass, a silhouette against the liquid neon of the city. He was a statue of coiled tension. Maya watched him, the man who had just promised to stand, not to run. She saw, in a flash of lightning, a thin, angry red line on his cheekbone, a scratch from the shrapnel and debris at the silo. She moved before she had processed the thought. She found the first aid kit in the stark, marble bathroom, retrieved a clean cloth, and dampened it with antiseptic. He did not turn as she approached, but the muscles in his back tensed. "Stay still," she said. Her voice was not the shaky plea of a civilian. It was the quiet command of a nurse. She reached up, her touch professional, and gently dabbed at the cut. He was hot, his skin radiating a dry fever of adrenaline and exhaustion. He flinched, not from the sting, but from the contact. His hand shot up, a reflex honed by violence, and clamped around her wrist. It was not a strike, but a capture. His grip was absolute, his fingers wrapping her pulse. He turned his head, his face inches from hers, his eyes, dark and turbulent as the storm outside, locked onto hers. The rain and the silence stretched. His gaze held no malice, only a raw, agonizing question that he would never speak. "Can I trust this? Can I trust you after a lifetime of armor? Can I allow myself to want this softness?" Maya did not pull away. She did not tremble. She simply met his stare, her own eyes answering what his were asking. She held her breath. He let go of her wrist, but only to move his hand. He cupped her face, his thumb brushing the tear track she had not realized had dried on her cheek. The calloused pad of his thumb was a rough, shocking reality. He leaned in. The movement was agonizingly slow, giving her every second to retreat. She did not. The first touch of his lips to hers was not a collision. It was a discovery. It was impossibly soft, a hesitant question, a profound exploration. It was a man who knew only how to take, suddenly asking. It was a silent, binding contract. She answered. A small, trembling sigh parting her lips, and the kiss deepened. Her free hand, the one still holding the cloth, dropped it. She raised her hand, not to his face but to his chest, pressing flat against the fine fabric of his shirt. She felt it, his heart hammering, a wild, uneven rhythm that betrayed the steel exterior. He was not a machine. He was human, and he was, in this moment, afraid. The knowledge made her bold. He broke the kiss, a low, rough sound in his throat, and rested his forehead against hers. His eyes were closed. He turned his head, pressing his cheek into her open palm, nuzzling into her skin like a man dying of thirst finding water. "My adoptive father," he whispered, his voice a rasp she had never heard, a confession ripped from his core. "Old man Rasa. He taught me how to count risks, how to weigh profit and loss. He taught me how to bleed an enemy." He took a ragged breath. "He never taught me this, how to believe in tenderness." He kissed her again, and this time there was no question. It was a claiming. His hand slid from her face, down her arm to her waist, pulling her flush against him. His other hand tangled in her hair, tilting her head. This was not the polite fiction of the tango. This was the truth. It was a kiss of desperation, of hunger, of two people who had seen the void and were now clinging to the only solid thing in the world. Her arms wrapped around his neck, holding him as if he were the one who needed saving. He kissed her jaw, his lips tracing a burning line down the column of her throat to the hollow of her collarbone. A shudder ran through her. He murmured her name. "Maya," against her skin, and it was not a word, but a sound of surrender. His hands gripped her back, pulling her impossibly closer, the silk of her shirt a fragile barrier. He was a man of absolute control, and she could feel the monumental effort it took for him to remain gentle. The air in the penthouse was thick, electric, a promise of a firestorm, but it held, suspended in the safety of that embrace. Sometime later, they were on the floor, wrapped in a cashmere blanket from the sofa, the city lights a distant, blurred watercolor. They lay on their sides, their fingers laced together. They did not speak of Gideon, or the BCV, or the trap. "Pancakes," she said quietly into the darkness. He turned his head on the cushion. "What?" "Atlas. He likes pancakes for breakfast, with far too many chocolate chips, and he wants to go stargazing. He was complaining about the school simulation. He said you cannot see the real dust lanes in a projection." Lucian was silent for a long time, his thumb stroking the back of her hand. "He will see them," he said, his voice flat with the weight of a vow. "I will not make you promises I cannot keep. Maya, I cannot promise you a normal life. I cannot promise you easy." He paused, his gaze intense. "But I will be there." A harsh, digital shriek shattered the moment. It was not a phone. It was the high-security alert panel by the door, now flashing a crimson red. The BCV, they were here. They had breached the perimeter. Lucian was on his feet in a single, fluid motion, the tenderness vanishing, the dawn clicking into place like the action of a gun. He was dressed, pulling his jacket on, checking the weapon he had placed on the table. "They are fast," he said, his voice ice. "They brought a full tactical team. They are coming from the roof and the lobby." Maya scrambled to her feet, her heart seizing. He moved to her, but not to hold her. He grabbed her arm. "We go to the technical floor. The sub-basement. The real game is just beginning." He stopped, and for one brief, impossible second, he leaned in and pressed a hard, fast kiss to her forehead. "Stay with me." As he turned to the reinforced door, Maya grabbed the crayon drawing from the bar, where it had fallen from his coat. Rasa 7. "Wait." He paused, one hand on the door's keypad. She ran to him, folded the drawing quickly, and shoved it into the breast pocket of his suit jacket. "A shield," she whispered, her voice fierce. "So you come back." Lucian looked down at the paper, then at her. He placed his own hand over the pocket. A silent acknowledgement. He nodded and hit the code to open the door. The technical floor was a web of concrete and humming servers, a city beneath the city. It was Lucian's true fortress. Here, the rules of the world above did not apply. "We cannot run, and we cannot hide," Lucian stated, his voice echoing in the cool, filtered air. He was standing before a bank of monitors, a general surveying his map. "The BCV has my name, and Black Sable has Maya's. We are trapped in a pincer. Therefore, we must make the pincers eat each other." Ariella, her face pale but composed, looked up from a console. "You are talking about a deal with the devil." "I am talking about a trade," Lucian corrected. "A truth exchange. We possess the full Black Sable ledger, the one from Maya's drive. The BCV only has rumors and a dead task force. We will give them a gift. We will give them the Black Sable crew, gift-wrapped, in exchange for conditional immunity." "Immunity for kidnapping," Ariella scoffed. "Callista Morrow will not just let you walk. She wants your head. Lucian, it is a bigger prize than a few street-level launderers." "Callista Morrow," Lucian said, the name sounding like an epithet, "is the director of the BCV. She's also a politician. She wants a win, a big, public, career-making win. Justice is secondary to her reputation." "You are miscalculating," Ariella warned, her voice sharp. "I have read her files. She's not a politician, she is a zealot. She will take your data, burn the Black Sable, and then use the momentum to burn you. She sells wind to harvest the storm. Lucian and you are the storm she wants." "Then we will ensure the price is too high," Lucian said, his gaze shifting. "Maya, the knife, the coordinates." Maya was at a separate workstation, the strange carved dagger under a high-resolution lamp. The coordinates were not a place. They were a routing number. "It is not a location," she said, her fingers typing rapidly. "It is an account, a shadow bank, the White Ember Bank. It is not registered in any database, but it is here." She pointed to the screen. "It is the primary financial artery. It is funding the Black Sable. Yes, but it is also funding 3 political action committees in Northbridge. All 3 of them are sponsors of Callista Morrow." The room went silent. The game had just changed. "She's not just a zealot," Maya said softly, looking at Lucian. "She is compromised. She's using the Black Sable as a private army to take down her rivals, and using the BCV to cover her tracks." Lucian's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth. "Now, we have our leverage. But to prove it, we need the bank's internal ledgers. We cannot hack it. It is an old-world institution. It runs on a closed system." "So how do we get in?" Jax asked, his first words since they had arrived. "We get invited," and Lucian said. "The White Ember Bank hosts an annual event for its most valued clients. It is called the Sable Masquerade. It is where the corrupt go to trade their souls. You go in as a guest. You come out a king, or you do not come out at all. We need that ledger." The following days were a blur of intense, claustrophobic preparation. While Atlas was moved to a secure, undisclosed Rasa medical facility under Ariella's direct supervision, Lucian and Maya trained. This was not a physical drill, it was a mental one. When you are in that room, every camera is an enemy, every microphone a threat. He taught her. Standing in the center of the server room, they will try to read your emotional tells. You must learn to lie by telling the truth. "I do not understand," and Maya said, "Look at me," he commanded. He stared at her, his gaze intense, probing. "Now tell me you are not afraid." "I'm not afraid," she said. It was a transparent lie. "Wrong, your eyes are too wide. You're holding your breath." He stepped closer. "Try again, but this time, focus on one, single, true thing. Focus on Atlas. Focus on his safety. Now, tell me you are not afraid." She held his gaze, her mind filling with the image of her son's face. "I'm not afraid." He nodded. "Better. Your pulse is still high, but your eyes are clear. You are not lying, you are prioritizing. You are telling them one truth to hide a more important one. At the masquerade, you will be my art expert. You will speak only of art, but your eyes will be telling them that you are exactly where you are supposed to be. You will tell the truth with half the story." While they trained, Nadia, recovered and furious, unleashed her own weapon. Her new podcast episode dropped like a bomb. It was titled The Nameless Dark Hero. She never mentioned Lucien or Maya. She spoke, with raw, shaking conviction, of a corrupt BCV, of a single mother framed, of a vast financial conspiracy, and of an unknown figure fighting from the shadows. The public narrative, once solidly against Rasa, began to fracture. The BCV, for the first time, hesitated. Their kidnapping case was looking less like a rescue and more like a witch hunt. The night before the masquerade, Ariella returned. She found Lucien alone, studying the bank's blueprints. "She is not ready," Ariella said, her voice quiet. "She is. She is a civilian. Lucien, she is a nurse. What you are asking, it is cruel. You are taking her hope and forging it into a weapon. It will break." She stepped forward. "I'm trained for this. I can do it. I can be your art expert. I know the protocols. Let me go." She is a variable you cannot control. It was a smart, clean, strategic move, a moment of professional jealousy hidden inside a sound tactical suggestion. Lucien did not look up from the blueprints. "No, it has to be her. They are expecting a woman like you. They will never expect a woman like her. Her strength is that she is not one of us." He finally met her gaze. "But your value is that you are. I am trusting you with the only thing that matters more than this mission. I am trusting you with the boy. Protect him, Ariella, from everyone, including me, if it comes to that." Ariella held his gaze, then nodded, a flicker of respect and perhaps disappointment in her eyes. Understood. Maya found him an hour later, after Ariella had left. She had been sharpening her own skills, studying the White Ember's client list. She was vibrating with a low, thrumming anxiety. "I am afraid," she admitted, the words tasting like failure. "I'm afraid I will be your weakness, that I will be the one who looks the wrong way, who says the wrong thing, that I will be the reason we fail." Lucien turned from the monitors. He walked to her, stopping just in front of her. He looked down at her, his face in shadow. "Do you know what my real weakness was? Maya," he said, his voice a low rumble. "For 20 years, my weakness was believing I needed no one. It was believing that attachments were liabilities, that strength was isolation." He reached out, but he did not touch her face or her hand. "You are not my weakness," he said. "You are my anchor. You are the one who makes me stand and fight when I am programmed to run and hide. You are the reason I am breaking all my own rules. They will not see a weakness in your eyes. They will see my strength." He held out his hand, palm up, not in a gesture of romance, but of business, a deal, in the dim, humming light of the war room. Maya looked at his hand, then at his face. She put her hand in his. His grip was warm and strong. It was not just an agreement, it was a vow, made in fire and steel, to walk into the lion's den together. The great hall of the White Ember Bank was not a room. It was a statement of power. It bloomed like a velvet-lined volcano, all deep crimson carpets and walls of polished obsidian. Guests drifted through the space in a sea of silks and jewels, their faces hidden behind elaborate, lacquered masks. The air was thick with the scent of hothouse flowers and the sound of a string quartet playing a haunting, edgy variation of a tango, a song of predators at play. Maya moved through the crowd, a phantom in a black square-necked dress, the silver brooch pinned to her shoulder. A spray of tiny diamonds forming Atlas's constellation was her only armor. Lucien was at her side, a solid, lethal presence in a dark tuxedo. His mask was not ornate. It was a simple, brutalist piece of graphite-colored metal, like the casing of a weapon. He was the shadow, and she was the bait. And the target found her. A figure in a crimson mask, shaped like a grinning jackal, stepped in front of her. "I was told there would be art to admire." A familiar voice purred. "Gideon," he bowed, a mockery of chivalry. His eyes, visible through the slits, fixed on her. "May I have this dance for old time's sake?" Lucien's hand, which had been resting on her back, tensed. Maya gave a tiny, almost invisible shake of her head. "Let me handle this." Lucian stepped back, melting into the crowd, his eyes never leaving them. "You should not be here, Gideon," Maya said, as he led her onto the floor, his hand burning her back. "Neither should you, sweetheart. You are swimming in an ocean too deep for you." The music swelled, the tango rhythm insistent. He spun her, pulling her close, his voice a venomous whisper in her ear. "But I have a way out, for all of us, the family, together again. You, me, the boy." "You are insane," she breathed, her body following the dance steps by pure muscle memory, her mind racing. "Am I?" He laughed, a dry, cold sound. "I am just a pawn, Maya, we all are. I am just a soldier for the real power, the nameless godfather who runs Black Sable, who runs this bank, who runs this whole damned city. But I have a plan. Join me. We can take it all." He was close, his guard down, blinded by his own arrogance, by his belief in her weakness. His hand was on her back, his other holding hers, in his breast pocket. She saw the thin, metallic edge of the key card, the access card to the data vault. "You really think," she whispered, leaning in, letting her voice tremble, "we could be a family?" He smiled, a true, predatory smile. "I knew you still loved me." He spun her, a dramatic, showy move, and in that half second as her back was to him, her hand, trained and steady, slipped from his shoulder into his jacket and plucked the key card. As she spun back, her palm was flat, the card hidden. "Excuse me," she said, and pulled away. She did not run. She walked calmly to the edge of the room and handed the card to a waiter who was actually one of Lucian's men. Moments later, in the sub-basement, Lucian used that card to enter the server room. It was a cold, blue-lit vault. He jacked his device into the main server. The file was named Ledger Ember. He hit download. The moment the transfer hit 1%, the world broke. A siren, high and deafening, shrieked through the bank. Red lights strobed, turning the lavish party into a vision of hell. "He was a test," Gideon roared, his mask gone, his face a mask of pure rage as he saw Maya heading for the service stairs. "You failed." She ran, pushing past panicked guests, Lucian's voice in her ear. "Rooftop, go, go. Jax is on the opposite building. Move." She burst through the door onto the gravel-strewn roof. The wind was a scream. Whipping her dress around her legs, she ran for the edge, the one closest to Jax's position. Gideon was faster. He came from another stairwell, cutting her off, his body slamming into hers. She fell, rolling, the gravel tearing at her bare arms. He was on her, dragging her to her feet, shoving her back against the parapet. Below them, 20 stories down. The city was a smear of indifferent lights. "You bitch!" he spat, his face contorted. "You and your billionaire, Dawn. You ruined it all." His knife appeared, the same one from the silo. The blade gleamed, cold and bright. "He will not have you. No one will." He leaned in, a cruel parody of their dance. "I can still smell the cinnamon, Maya. It is the last thing I will remember." Maya looked at him, not at the knife. Her heart was a cold, steady engine. "You missed the only scent that matters." "Gideon," she said, her voice a whip of ice. "Courage." As he lunged, she did not retreat. She moved in, just as Lucian had taught her. She deflected his knife hand, caught his wrist in a two-handed grip, and used his own momentum to slam his arm down onto the concrete ledge. She put her weight on the joint, a sickening, wet crack echoed, and he howled, the knife clattering free. A noise like a giant, angry insect filled the air. A black helicopter, the Black Sable insignia on its side, rose from the edge of the building, a spotlight blinding her. From across the chasm, a brilliant, fiery streak cut the night. Jax was firing flares, not at the chopper, but at its sensor array, trying to blind it. Lucian appeared from the stairwell door, a shadow in motion. "Maya!" The helicopter's side door slid open, a man with a heavy-caliber weapon appearing. Gideon, clutching his broken arm, scrambled for the knife. There was no time. The gap between her building and the one Jax was on was 10 feet, a black, windy void. "Lucian," she screamed. He did not hesitate. He did not run to her. He ran at the gap. He launched himself into the air, a stunning, impossible leap of faith and power. He hit the opposite rooftop, rolling hard, his shoulder taking the impact. He was on his feet in a second. "Jump. Maya, trust me. Jump." The bullets from the helicopter began to thud into the concrete where she stood. She backed up 3 steps, her lungs on fire. She closed her eyes, saw Atlas's face, and ran. She leaped into the nothing. She was never going to make it. His arms were there, a steel band catching her, grabbing her. His momentum pulling them both down. They crashed onto the rooftop, rolling away from the edge into the shadow of a massive air conditioning unit as the helicopter's bullets chewed the concrete they had just vacated. They were alive. They had the drive. They were in the secure vehicle, racing through the city's underpasses. When Ariella's call came through, her voice was not cold or strategic. It was broken. "Lucian, God, Lucian, it was a trap. The call. It was a diversion. A fire at the medical facility. It was a fake. They diverted the car. They tricked me." Lucian's hand, which had been resting on Maya's knee, went rigid. "Ariella, where is my son?" Maya's world stopped. She saw Ariella's choked sob on the video screen. "He is gone. They took him. Lucian, they left. They left this." She held up a piece of paper. A child's drawing. It was Atlas's constellation map. Scrawled across it in a heavy, black script were 3 words: "For the Godfather." That night, in the deepest, safest bunker of the Rasa Consortium, Maya sat by an unlit window, her body wrapped in a blanket, shaking with a cold that had nothing to do with the night air. She was a hollowed-out, empty thing. Lucian approached her. He did not speak. He did not offer comfort or platitudes. He knelt in front of her, a dawn on his knees, and placed one hand on her trembling leg, a simple, solid point of contact. He waited until her eyes, dead and vacant, finally met his. "I swear to you, Maya," he said, his voice a low, terrifying vow, "I will use all of my darkness. I will burn this city to its foundations, and I will bring our son back to the light." The Ashline Desert was a place where things went to die. The air was thin, tasting of dust and ancient salt. At its edge sat the Ash Wastes Bridge, a rusted skeleton of steel spanning a dry ravine. It was a known neutral ground, a place for underworld trades where the only witness was the empty sky. Lucian's armored SUV cut through the pre-dawn light, a dark blade in a gray world. Jax was driving, his shoulder heavily bandaged, his face a mask of grim determination. Maya sat in the back, her hand not once leaving the cold. Heavy hard drive in her lap, the ledger ember. Lucian sat beside her, his stillness a coiled, lethal spring. They stopped at the center of the bridge. The silence was absolute. A bank of static, and then a massive screen previously hidden in a transport truck, flickered to life. The hologram was 20 feet tall, a ghostly, digitized giant. The figure was not a masked gangster, but a woman in a crisp, professional suit. Callista Morrow, director of the BCV. A predictable venue. Mr. Rasa. Her amplified voice boomed, devoid of any emotion, but effective. "You have my son." Maya's voice was a raw, broken thing, amplified only by her own pain. "I have your collateral," Callista corrected, her hologram image looking down. The white ember bank was a cancer, the black sable crew, a useful scalpel. But scalpels grow dull. I was simply doing the city's dirty work, building a legacy. You, Mr. Rasa, were a competitor, and you, Miss Hartley, were an unforeseen complication. "The deal," Lucian said, his voice flat, cutting through the director's monologue. "The ledger for the boy?" "Of course," Callista smiled, a cold, thin expression. "A full confession from the city's greatest criminal, and the return of the city's lost child. The media will love it." "There is a change of plans," Lucian said by stepping out of the vehicle, his hands open. "You do not just get the ledger, you get me for the boy. That is the trade." Maya's head snapped toward him, a silent no on her lips. Callista's hologram actually laughed, a dry, static-filled sound. A noble sacrifice, Don Rosa, but a foolish one. "You are not a king, you are a chess piece, and I do not need one piece. I need the entire board. I need you and the ledger. I need the public capture of the villain, and the private data to control the city he leaves behind. Give me the drive, and then you will both surrender." As she spoke, a new voice cut into Lucian's earpiece. It was Nadia. "The feed is live. Lucian, I have patched her audio, all of it, into a city-wide emergency broadcast. The whole of Northbridge just heard her." A flicker of annoyance crossed Callista's digital face as a notification pinged on her own comms. Her grand monologue had just become a public confession. Loyal BCV agents, the ones who believed in the badge, were now hearing the rot at their core. "Bring the boy," Callista snarled, her composure cracking. Two of her armored men walked forward from the far side of the bridge, pushing a small, stumbling figure between them. It was Atlas. He was wearing a too-large helmet, his hands bound. "Atlas!" Maya screamed. Surging forward, Lucian's arm shot out, holding her back. "The drive first," Callista commanded. Maya grabbed the ledger, ready to run. And that was when the third shot was fired. It came not from Callista's men, but from a rocky ridge above them. A high-caliber crack. "Sniper!" Jax roared, shoving Lucian back. The bullet, meant for Lucian, tore through Jax's already injured shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Gideon. He was screaming, running from his sniper's nest, firing his rifle indiscriminately. "It is mine. The ledger is mine. I take the prize." He was not an operator, he was a rabid dog, trying to seize control, to claim the bounty for himself. Callista's men returned fire. The bridge erupted into a crossfire of chaos. Smoke grenades detonated, plunging the scene into a gray, choking fog. Maya had only one thought. She heard her son cry out in terror. She ran. She ran straight into the smoke, into the path of the bullets. "Atlas!" She saw him, a small shadow in the haze. She dove, grabbing him, her body wrapping around his, shielding him as they crashed to the steel deck. She rolled them behind a concrete divider, bullets sparking off the concrete, whining in the air above them. Lucian saw them. He saw they were covered for a second. He saw Jax, crawling, weapon in hand, and he saw Gideon, scrambling from his nest, retreating toward a nearby fuel depot, a cluster of rusted gasoline tanks. Lucian did not hesitate. He ran, a black wraith, disappearing into the depot after him. The warehouse was dark, smelling of gasoline and rust. A single emergency light flickered, casting strobe-like, frantic shadows. Gideon was there, his face a mask of sweat and terror, trying to reload. Lucian hit him. It was not a fight, it was a disassembly. He slammed Gideon's head into a metal locker. Gideon swung the rifle, and Lucian broke his arm over a steel railing. It was a dance of pure, cold rage. Each blow was for the lie 9 years ago. Each block was for Nadia in the silo. Each slam was for the terror in Atlas's eyes. Gideon, broken and sobbing, scrambled, his one good hand fumbling for his detonator. We both die," he shrieked, and slammed the button. A small, red light on a massive fuel tank began to blink, a 10-second timer. Lucian looked at the blinking light, then at Gideon. He grabbed the man by his broken body, slammed him against a central support pillar, and in one vicious motion ripped Gideon's own belt from his pants, strapping him to the steel. "You do not get to die with me," Lucian snarled. He ran, not for the door, but for the wall, where a large, red lever sat behind a glass pane. He smashed it. A horn blared. He turned and sprinted for the exit as the fire suppression system kicked in. A wall of white, high-expansion foam erupted from the ceiling. He dove through the doorway as a muffled whump shook the building, the explosion smothered by the foam. He landed on the gravel, his hands scraped raw and bloody. He stood, breathing heavily, as the sound of sirens close. Urgent sirens filled the air. "Lucian?" He turned. Maya was running toward him, her face streaked with smoke, her arms empty. His heart stopped. Then she was past him, pulling Atlas out of the back of Jax's SUV. Where she had secured him, she ran back, her son in her arms. They met in the middle of the desert road, a collision of three bodies. Lucian's arms wrapped around them both, pulling Maya's face into his neck. His other hand splayed on Atlas's back, shielding him, holding him. His bloody hands stained her jacket. Atlas was crying, his small hands clinging to Maya's shirt, wedged between the two adults who had burned a world to find him. "She is gone," Ariella's voice said in his ear, flat, exhausted. "Callista is gone. She took the drive. Lucian, the planted one, the encrypted half of the ledger." They were in the bunker, the city raging above them, but the war was not over. It was lost. "She has the drive," Ariella said, her voice hollow. "The encrypted half, without the key, it is just noise. We have nothing." Lucian was silent. His bloody hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash. He reached into his jacket, his fingers brushing against the folded square of paper. The shield. He pulled out the crayon drawing of Rasa 7. He stared at it, then his eyes snapped to the bank of monitors where a copy of the encrypted drive was being analyzed. The code was a meaningless, scrolling waterfall. "Atlas," Lucian said, his voice a low whisper. "When was he in the war room?" "He was there for an hour, after the hospital," Ariella said, not understanding. "He was drawing—" Lucian unfolded the drawing. He held it next to the screen. The constellation Atlas had drawn. It was not random. The waxy, childish lines were a perfect one-to-one match for a repeating pattern, a visual artifact in the encrypted file's header. "He did not draw a star," Lucian said, a slow, dawning realization. "He copied what he saw on my screen." He looked at Maya. "It is not a password, it is a visual key, a pattern lock." Within minutes, they had scanned the drawing. The code slammed into the lock. The encrypted file cracked open, revealing the second and most damning, half of the ledger ember. "She did not just run the BCV," Maya breathed, staring at the screen. "She was the Black Sable. She and Gideon, it was all her." "Then let us make it rain," Nadia said, her eyes bright with a terrible, righteous fury. With Ariella's technical skill and Nadia's network, they did not just leak the ledger, they created a digital storm. They uploaded the entire unredacted ledger ember, along with Callista's full confession audio from the bridge, to the decentralized Starwell network. It was untraceable, unstoppable, and multiplying by the second. Callista Morrow, realizing her network was on fire and her name was poison, ran. She did not run to a safe house. She ran to an escape route, the illegal container port at the mouth of the river. But Lucian was already moving. "Jax, get the boy to the perimeter. Ariella, you are our eye. Maya, you are with me." The speedboat cut through the early morning fog, a black knife in a gray-white world. The water was a flat, cold sheet of glass. The long, mournful horn of the container ship, Emerald Ghost, echoed through the mist. A funeral dirge for a dying empire? They found her on the final loading dock, a lone figure in a dark suit, her escape boat bobbing just feet away. She was cornered. They stepped onto the dock. The air smelled of salt and diesel. Callista turned, her face not one of panic, but of pure, cold hatred. She raised a pistol, her hand steady, and aimed it, not at Lucian, but at Maya. "The bitch who started it all," Callista hissed. "The little nurse who should have stayed poor and quiet." Lucian did not raise his own weapon. He did not dive. He simply stepped, deliberately, into the line of fire. His body shielding Maya's, he unclipped his own gun from its holster, and in a gesture of absolute surrender, knelt, placing it on the damp ground by his knee. "You want to end an empire?" he said, his voice calm, carrying in the heavy air. "Then end mine, not theirs." Callista's finger tensed on the trigger. "Mom," a high, clear voice cut through the fog. "Mom, I see the star. It is not sleeping." From the secure rescue vehicle at the end of the dock, Atlas was pointing up, his face pressed to the armored glass. It was a half-second, a flicker. Callista's gaze, drawn by the sound, shifted. A mother's instinct she could not suppress. It was all Maya needed. She did not hesitate. She exploded forward, not in fear, but in rage. She did not grab for the gun. She kicked, a desperate, powerful front kick, learned in a hospital self-defense class. Her foot connected with Callista's wrist. Snapping it back, the gun fired, the bullet whining harmlessly into the sky and clattered across the dock. A second shot, sharp and precise, rang out from above. Callista screamed, clutching her other hand, the one that had been reaching for the fallen gun. On a gantry crane above, Ariella lowered her rifle, her shot perfect. The threat was over. The aftermath was not a resolution, it was a cleansing. The BCV was dismantled, its loyal agents rebuilding from the ashes. Callista, exposed and arrested, faced a lifetime of legal battles. The White Ember Bank imploded, and the Black Sable crew, its head and its funding, severed, dissolved into rumor. Lucian Rosa, the kidnapper, was now the man who had brought down the city's greatest monster, his name cleared by law and forever bound to Maya's heart. Months later, the Northbridge sun was bright. They stood on a newly dedicated hospital wing, a banner hung, bright and cheerful, the Rasa 7 Fund for Pediatric Cardiology. Lucian, in a suit but no tie, was watching Atlas, now rosy-cheeked and strong, chase Nadia's microphone. He turned to Maya, her hair bright in the sun, her hand in his. He knelt. There was no ring. There was only a piece of paper. Pulled from his pocket, it was Atlas's latest school assignment, a drawing of their family. "Atlas wrote something on the back," Lucian said, his voice thick, unsteady for the first time. "He wrote, 'I want you to stay here, forever.'" He looked up at her, his eyes, those dark, dangerous eyes, now open, vulnerable, and full of light. "Maya, will you—" "Yes," she whispered, the tears coming, hot and happy. "Yes." He rose, and his kiss was not one of possession or desperation. It was a promise. It was a homecoming. Atlas cheered, and the crowd applauded. Later that night, after the party, after Atlas was asleep, they stood in the silence of their penthouse. His hands found her, his touch reverent, tracing the line of her jaw, her neck, his skin on hers a prayer. He held her, not in passion, but in a profound, deep, and overwhelming peace. They had earned this. From a distance, Ariella watched them, a small, genuine smile on her face. Jax, his arm in a sling, nodded and went to secure the perimeter. Nadia, in the corner, packed her gear, a tear in her eye, and hit record one last time. "Sometimes," she said softly to her audience, "a woman walks into a Don's office for a transaction and walks out with a family." In Lucian's old office, on the 77th floor, the crayon drawing of Rasa 7 hung, framed in simple, dark wood. The heavy door clicked shut, but this time, when Lucian looked up, his gaze did not promise danger. It fell on Maya, asleep on the sofa, and Atlas, building a tower of blocks on the priceless rug, and his eyes, for the first time in his life, promised a home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would be honored to know where in the world you are tuning in from. Please, let us know in the comments so we can connect, share our thoughts, and build this family. If you enjoyed this journey, please consider subscribing to our channel, Mafia Boss Story, and giving this video a like. And if you want to see more stories like this reach a wider audience, please hit that hype button. Your support means the world to us.